All right, hey everyone, my name is Anthony, and for this video, I want to share how I relate to David from Courageous Faith, and specifically the chapter on his victory over Goliath. And you know, when I look at David's story, I'm really struck by how young he was and how ordinary he looked, and at the same time, how confidently he stepped into something that nobody else was willing to face. And Heinsohn says that David walked out armed with faith in God. And while everyone else was trusting in their weapons, their size, or even their own experience, and that part really hits me because I know what it feels like to face situations where my own strength isn't enough. And David didn't wake up that morning thinking that he would face a giant. He was literally just running an errand for his dad. He was being obedient to his father, and that showed us that doing the small things leads to giant opportunities. And but once he saw Goliath mocking the living God, something sparked inside of him. Where Heinsohn writes that David wasn't focused on his own safety; he was focused on the reputation of God, and that really challenges me because a lot of the giants in my life, whether it's stress or uncertainty or just the spiritual battles and responsibilities, they always try to get me to focus on myself instead of what God wants. And I've had seasons where I felt unprepared or overlooked, or kind of like David arriving on the battlefield with groceries in his hand and just not expecting it. But David reminds me that God doesn't need me to have everything figured out. He just wants me to use what I already have. And as Heinsohn says, God will never put more in your hand until you're willing to use what is already there. And I really relate to that a lot because there are areas in my life where I feel like I don't have enough. Whether it's enough strength and enough clarity, enough resources. But the story of David just pushes me to really ask myself, what has God already put in my hand? What step of obedience is right in front of me? And where is God asking me to trust him, even if the odds just look ridiculous? And another connection I feel with David is just the way he stood alone. I like how Ed Heinsohn points that out, that David left behind the faithless and fearful army of Israel. And he even left his own brothers behind when he stepped into that valley. And, there are times in my walk with God where obedience feels like that. Like I have to stand in faith even if others don't even if others don't see what I see or feel what I feel. And David encourages me to just step out anyways. And, David also shows me what simple faith can produce. That was a big thing for me. He wasn't perfect. He didn't have a royal background, but he trusted God deeply. And Ed Heinsohn reminds us that David had the kind of faith one could live by or die for. I love that. I want that kind of faith. I want to stop waiting until I feel strong, or instead, I want to move because God is strong. So the big takeaway for me is this: God can use the common, ordinary people in extraordinary ways when they trust him enough to take action. And David ran, just like David ran toward the giant, not away from him. So his faith, it wasn't quiet, it wasn't silent, it actually moved him. And that's what I'm praying for in my own life. I want to face my obstacles with the same confidence David had. Not confidence in myself, but confidence in the God who stands with me in the valley. All right, well, thanks for listening. God bless you guys.